Good morning! So, today you and I are going to talk about operations and why, in my opinion, operations is one of the hardest things there is out there in the world of IT to learn. So let's get into it. Now, let me tell you a story, first and foremost, about an old colleague of mine who is... he is just amazing. Or rather, I assume that he's still amazing, but he was amazing when I knew him. It was a while back. Now, he was the operations expert, if you will, at my previous job at Ticketmaster. And what's sparking my reminiscing about this amazing person is virtually that just yesterday my company had an interview with a very nice young woman. Actually, it was really fun to see that we had an applicant, a female applicant for an operations position at the company. And we got to talking, and she had almost all of the experience that I wish that I had in this field, because to me there's three things in general terms that at least I want to achieve to consider myself to be a very, very well-rounded programmer. Now, the first and foremost thing you need to learn is to do back-end development. You need to be able to understand how servers to work and all of that good stuff, because that's bread and butter, everyday stuff. The second part of it all is to have a fairly good... Now, I've spent a lot of time with UI development and front-end development, but I think that at least you should have a basic understanding of it, because most of the time you will find yourself, well, it kind of depends, but at least in my experience, if you do professional software development towards the web or something of that nature, you're probably catering to a user of some sort, right? So those two things are not number one and number two. But what's a little bit different about these things is that it is the sort of thing that you can go to school and learn and get almost, I'm not saying 100%, but almost everything you need in order to start doing that at a professional or at least a very high level. However, that is not the case for operations. And let me tell you why. Operations is the sort of thing that at small scale, absolutely, you can go and learn that in school. But the problem is that for the most part, an operations person is not somebody that you hire to do a small thing. Infrastructure is usually not the sort of thing that a small company has an issue with. It's very rare, I would say, that you have an operations person. The same thing used to be the case for database administrators. Today they're very rare because it's just a few really, really big companies or very specialized companies that have a need for that sort of person. So when this woman came to my company and started talking to me about these things, I was extremely excited because I actually know where she's working. She's working at that has the sort of size that you kind of need in order to have a full-time operations person. And so we talked, and it turns out that she actually was in school with my colleague from Ticketmaster. And this guy, I swear to God, you may think that an operations person isn't all that important to a company, and it kind of depends, of course, on what your infrastructure looks like. But this guy, we used to joke to say, basically saying that if he ever left the company, the lights would probably go off in the building, because anytime something was wrong with our builds or something was basically not working in our environments, he was the go-to guy. He was also the guy who was highly involved in spearheading a migration of one of the world's biggest companies and the world's biggest ticketing company. We're talking a massive, massive company. He was involved in the migration of moving them from their own hosted solutions over to the cloud. That's the sort of scale that you need in order to have an operations person or several operations people, because when you are at that scale, these things are a full-time job. However, if you are a small company or even a mid-sized company, odds are, and this is getting even more true with more people moving over to Docker and Kubernetes, and there's more and more tools that make operations a little bit easier. It used to be the case that for large companies you had to have entire teams because it was so difficult to manage everything. There was a lot of manual work involved. So, how is this all tying into what I'm trying to tell you in this video? Well, it's tying into the reason why I felt such joy at talking to this woman and having, at my previous job at Ticketmaster, basically being, I think I was his big, I'm just gonna go out and say it, even if he is watching this, I had my own little bromance going on with him. He didn't know, but the skills that he has acquired, they make me very excited. And here's why. Because I can't study to become like him. It's the same thing with hacking or being a really good security expert. These are the sort of things that are extremely tricky to learn by just studying. These are the sort of things that you get good at by starting out doing something that is adjacent and finding yourself in a position where you actually get to do this more and more and more. So finding someone who is a real master of, say, operations is, and especially so if it's a girl, considering how few women there are in programming in general, that's like finding a unicorn with a blue stripe. It's the rarest thing that you can imagine. And being able to talk to somebody like that, for somebody like myself who's very interested in this sort of thing, but I have never had the opportunity really to acquire that knowledge, is you could pay these people to just sit and talk to them. And for those of you out there who are interested in operations and manage DevOps and all of these trendy things that we talk about when it comes to infrastructure, you should know that if you get the chance to meet such a person, talk to them. For the love of God, talk to them. You have to talk to them, befriend them, whatever. Because if they have, such as my previous colleague, had the experience of working at a really, really large company, they have knowledge that you cannot acquire yourself. You have to be at that type of size in order for you to even get the experience. I mean, an operations person, in my personal opinion, an operations person who's fresh out of school it's going to be tough, depending on your situation. If you're really lucky, you get an operations job at a really large company, you start acquiring knowledge by just talking to people who are already there. But you should know, as I've said before, the difference is massive. At small scale, operations is nothing in comparison to what it is at scale. At scale, it is one of the biggest, most complicated things that you can imagine. And it's the sort of job where you already been working determines almost exclusively how good you are, because unfortunately you can't really practice your skills. It's not really possible, because it's such a vastly different experience to work at a very small company doing a little bit of operations, and at a really, really large company where you have to manage maybe hundreds, if not thousands, of clusters and boxes and orchestration. There's tons of validation, maintaining secrets in the environments. It's such a massive difference. So that's why I'll tell the juniors out there, if you are interested in operations and you want to get into that, do what you can the only thing that you really can do, which is learn Kubernetes, Docker, Chef, Puppet, Ansible, Salt, you know, all these different tools that we have out there. These are relevant, and then you have to brace yourself a little bit, because you may find that you have to, if you're really lucky and you're willing to move, you might find that there's a really large company out there somewhere who are looking for junior operations people. In my experience, I haven't really seen much of that going on. So it's a little bit tougher to get into that niche of IT, in my experience, than it is to get into, say, something like programming, where the demand is massive. It's the same thing with DBAs, or database administrators. if you want to be a DBA today, you're gonna have to look. It's not that common because, as I said, the desire, the need from the companies is highly specialized, and it's very, very rare that small companies are going to, two things are true there. It's rare that they actually need you, and it's even more rare that they're going to be able to occupy you full time. That's the thing that is an issue for me and my colleagues with this woman who was applying to us. Like, she was amazing, but we don't know if we can actually keep her around full time as exclusively an operations person, because we're not at that size, and unfortunately very, very few companies are at that size. So that's why I am extra keen. I really listen, and I really try to interact with people who have that sort of experience, because trust me, these people are rare. If you know or have any leads on a good security expert, hacker or something like that, or an operations person, count yourself lucky, because they are like fucking unicorns.